Hello, everybody, and good morning. That kind of introduction does one thing: it makes me feel old. It just means that I've been here a long time, and one of my favorite places to be is SharePoint SPTechCon, so I'm really happy to be here. When I started in the SharePoint space, I was reinventing myself, and I came to an SPTechCon, I believe it was in San Francisco at that time. And for one reason or another, these things happen. A speaker didn't show up, and it was the Power BI in SharePoint session, and I ended up teaching that class. And so that was in 2007 or 2008, I think it was. So to come from there, being very new in this community, being new into SharePoint, and then to be here today is a tremendous honor. So I really want to thank the conference organizers for asking me to be here, and thanks to all of you for coming. None of this would be possible without our sponsors, so can we give our sponsors a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the things that makes this community so different is the partners and sponsors that are in it and the strength of the community. Did any of you know that there's going to be a user group meeting tomorrow evening? Okay, a few of you do know that. The user groups around the world are a tremendous place for you to continue your education, to meet other people. They are free. They usually happen monthly. Those, along with other SharePoint Saturdays and other events. This community in the SharePoint space is singular in its warmth and welcome to new people. I am the poster child for having community help me in my career and enable me to improve my speaking skills, to learn this technology, to meet amazing people, and to really find a home for my unique set of skills. I always like to tell people a little bit about myself and why I'm here. This is that slide. And it doesn't have a lot of words on it, except for the few that are important, like SharePoint. And so the reason I put this up is because there's a common misconception in this business that you have to be a developer or have a computer science degree to find a place here. That's not the case for me. I do not have a computer science degree. I'm a theater major. So I don't know exactly how that ended up happening, but the point is that in the collaboration space, you can find a place for your unique skills. It is open, and with the advent of Microsoft Teams, we're at another inflection point in this industry with a new product coming along that gives us the opportunity to expand our careers and deliver better experiences. It's also a place where diversity is encouraged. That picture on the far side, those are my parents. My mother is from Portland, my father is from Kenya, and you know, I always like to remember that this is a privilege to get to be here with you today. Had I grown up in Kenya with my father's family, I'd be an awesome corn farmer. That would be fantastic, but I probably wouldn't be standing here talking about technology for one of the greatest companies I believe in the world. I spent a long time in the SharePoint space in Microsoft IT, as well as for Sketchers. I have a blog called Solution Strategist, and I have a show on YouTube called Coffee in the Cloud. You can always find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and so I can encourage you to connect with me, ask your questions. I'm pretty good at answering on Twitter or LinkedIn. And you know, I would be nothing without my 1966 Chevelle, most important picture on there next to my dogs and my husband. So what are we going to do today? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip through a few slides, and then I'm going to hop into a demo of Microsoft Teams and SharePoint together. How many of you are using Microsoft Teams already? A little show of hands. Wow, lots of you. That's fantastic. Do you consider your implementation, raise your hand if you consider your implementation to be a pilot, a test. Okay, that's good. I see that everywhere around the world. People are testing it. They're trying to figure it out. And a lot of people are like, okay, Microsoft, what are you doing? What are you doing? You made another tool. Why did you do that? So I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to show you some of the new features, talk about what's new and what's coming, and help you understand what's in it for you. I do want to start off by talking about the fact that this change dramatically affects the experience of your user community. More so in some cases than SharePoint, more so than Yammer, more so than the other collaboration experiences we've been designing for a long time now in this business. This is bringing together all of the components of Office 365 in a user experience that hopefully reduces how many times you have to context switch in your day. How many of you have to have more than 10 browser windows open to do your job? Bam, exactly. That is a part of the issue that we're trying to address by having Microsoft Teams. The other part is that the culture that Satya Nadella is trying to drive inside Microsoft now is one of listening first. And we have listened to our customers. We actually created the fragmentation that most of our user community are dealing with having Skype for Business and SharePoint and Yammer and Outlook, all as different experiences. The gentleman who's my corporate vice president, who runs and created Microsoft Teams, is also the same man who created Outlook and he created Microsoft Project. So I often joke with them that between him and Jeff Teeper, who created SharePoint, they've been paying my mortgage for about 20 years now. They also paid for one divorce, but that's a longer story. We won't go into that from the stage. So we are changing the culture. And so when you start to onboard people onto Microsoft Teams, or you continue to expand your pilots, it's important to think about the shift, the change fatigue that your user community might be under. You can use Teams to drive more collaboration and to reduce those silos. One of my favorite things about Teams is the fact that I can bring in people from different departments who need to rally around a common cause in one team experience. Of course, we could do that before, but still people had to bounce back to Outlook to answer quick questions. They had another tool for project management. They're bouncing around. And so making sure that you're engaging the right people, that you're open to the feedback of how people are having this experience, and going through these kind of 10 steps of driving culture change is an important thing to remember as you get through the technology. How many of you have seen what we call the inner loop, outer loop slide? Okay, a few of you have. This is important because people are always like, okay, Microsoft, what are you doing? You've created another tool. Now I need to understand what tool when. And that's what this slide is really about. In the center of the universe, you see SharePoint there for content collaboration. SharePoint is the underlying file content system for Teams. Okay? I want to say that again. SharePoint is the file content management system that underlies Teams. SharePoint and OneDrive are both accessible inside Teams. So we're not creating something new in that regard. We're giving another surface area to where SharePoint already exists. The inner loop is where you are doing most of your day-to-day work. It's where you are collaborating with people. I call it your tribe. These are people you talk to all the time, you're delivering with all the time. They're people that you likely know, even if they're not in the same office. That inner loop is what Teams is really built for, that fast collaboration with those folks inside your core group of people. The outer loop is where Yammer has a place. And yes, Yammer still does have a place. Now this depends on the size of your organization and whether or not you're already invested in Yammer or not. Many large companies use Yammer to drive support communities, communities of practice, these large-scale groups of people who may not know each other but share a common interest. Right? They need to be able to communicate. When I was, before I moved into the Teams engineering group, I was in IT and I was responsible for launching Microsoft Teams inside of Microsoft. When I did that with a Yammer community. That Yammer community provided a support experience and a place for people to ask questions, a place for them to trade knowledge and information, and a way for me to understand what kind of the heartbeat was of people onboarding to this new experience. Yammer is fantastic for that. Now, Outlook isn't going anywhere. That email experience, for me at least, having been a Teams user now for going on 2 years, my email is even more valuable. Because what's not in my email anymore is those questions, hey, Karuana, did you see the deck? Are you coming to the meeting? Here's the agenda for the meeting. All those small project-based communications are now no longer in my email. My email is reserved for communication with external customers, people who are outside my domain, and newsletters and HR announcements and things of that nature. But my email is much more valuable because it's reduced the amount of volume I had there. I know many people like to do the zero inbox method. I was never able to deal with that. I get like 900 emails a day. I did. And that was just very difficult to keep up with in terms of even using rules and all the great capabilities in Outlook. So now I'm able to do that a little bit differently and have a more valuable experience in email now that I've moved 99% of my project work to Teams. So for all of you, how many of you consider yourself to be like system administrators or you own collaboration in your firm? Okay, and how many, thank you. How many of you are developers? Developers, excellent, okay. For both sides of the house, for all of you, there are new opportunities in this space with Microsoft Teams. And so it's important to think about how you can extend the services you've already been delivering by enabling this hub for teamwork. That is what we call Teams, the hub for teamwork. I like to say it's a new center of gravity for Office 365. And whether you're thinking about SharePoint integrations or custom development, you're turning on meeting and calling, or trying to have a more connected workplace amongst your remote workers, there's a place for everyone in this space. When I first got into SharePoint a long time ago, I was reinventing myself. And SharePoint was one of those products that ended up on my desk. There was another firm who was going to charge my company, Skechers at the time, like $250,000 for a single form. And I said, we have SharePoint, right? We have Microsoft. We can do this. It doesn't have to cost $250,000. And my VP at the time, he was like, you know how to do that? And I'm like, sure. I have been accused of being overconfident more than once in my career, but I figured I could do it, right? So the idea here is that kind of business process automation that SharePoint is so very good at can now be extended to the rest of Office 365 by using forms, by using flow, by having the workflows that express themselves in Teams. So this is the idea of the unified user experience. So, people say, oh, hey, well, are you going to put my inbox in Teams? That's not really the point, right? The point is to change the conversation and the experience into chat. Are some of you also using Skype for Business in this room? Yeah, Skype for Business, okay. So Skype for Business, fantastic product for meeting, calling, and instant messaging. What is happening is that we have delivered in Microsoft Teams the same core capabilities. Now we're helping people who, if you have not already deployed Skype for Business online, our recommendation to you is to go directly to Teams. That is where all the innovation is going to be happening. We are releasing a new server version of Skype for Business on-prem. We'll continue to support that product. But in the cloud, Teams will be the primary client for meeting and calling and instant messaging. And it will be accessible to your users right alongside that collaboration experience. So no more switching between the two products, right? So the idea too is that have it being built in the cloud and built in Azure from the ground up, it's also providing a higher quality meeting experience. Some customers did experience difficulty with Skype for Business. We certainly know that. We have additional best practices and new engineering that enables us to deliver a much better experience all the way to your mobile device. My old boss used to ask me, where was the missing bag of instant messages that he didn't get on his Skype for Business mobile application? He wasn't terribly happy with it all the time. So now I'm very happy to use, and I use religiously, the mobile application for Teams, especially for chat and instant messaging and access to all of your files and resources. It's an extremely good experience. So the idea here is that all of this is built on top of the power of Office 365 groups, of the Microsoft Graph, and of course our Security and Compliance Center. Most organizations that I talk to now, they have, we'll call it shadow IT, but actually I like to think of it as motivated users trying to get work done. Right? People will go and get work done however they can if they don't feel that IT is delivering the services in a modern way that they need. And so you'll see WhatsApp come up. You'll see alternate applications that you didn't even know existed start to sprout up around your network, right? And it can be a security risk, especially today. So what we want to do is we want to give them that modern experience in a way that you can manage and control. Microsoft Teams leverages all the governance capabilities that are already built into Office 365 groups. And at the end of this, I'll tweet out and show a link to the governance article that gives you the step-by-step guidance about how to govern Microsoft Teams. We are still a new product, and there are still capabilities that are launching. Things like private channels and other things, automation for team deployment and what have you. But the core scenarios now are done in terms of being able to manage naming, manage expiration, classification, all of these things that you expect and that you've probably been doing for a long time in SharePoint experiences. So there's some other slides in here that basically show the interface, but I think what a better thing to do might be to click through these and actually go into the product itself. Let's do that. All right. So Teams is, of course, accessible and available in a desktop client, in a browser, and in a mobile app. That mobile app is available for both iOS and Android. There is still a version for Windows Phone, though we're not developing on it any longer. The desktop app is available for Macs or for PCs. And one of the things about the new way we've engineered this is that there's pretty much feature parity across all of those experiences. In the web clients, on occasion there is a little bit of a difference, but for the most part, your training initiatives and your adoption initiatives are the same no matter what kind of device people are using. We have a lot of executives inside Microsoft, and I see this around the world too, who would like to use their iPad primarily, or some sort of tablet device. And so making sure that they have a quality experience that's also managed and all that good stuff is important. And so we built this in a way that people would be able to do that. Over here on the left-hand rail, you're looking at the app bar that shows the various and sundry capabilities that are available in Teams. And what you're looking at here is examples of Teams and channels. And for those of you who may not know, it's important to note that channels are like topics, and they are work streams that are related to that particular team. Every time you create a team, it comes with a general channel, and every channel comes with some basic default experiences. And what you're looking at here is the conversation thread. So what makes this different from email or from Skype for Business is what we call persistent chat. That basically means that you type something and it stays there, and you can find it in the context of this conversation. So when I first started using Teams, I went on a vacation right after preview because I was tired. And we'd been working a lot of hours to get this thing launched. And so I went on vacation. When I came back, what I didn't expect was how much easier it was for me to catch up on all of my projects and work. Because I could simply go to the team about that project, I could look at all of the different things that had happened while I was gone, and I didn't have to switch context. Switching context is one of those things that neuroscientists will tell you really impact your productivity, having to think about different things constantly. Sometimes my days at Microsoft are back-to-back 30-minute meetings, and those are my least effective days because I'm having to switch the topic too often, and my brain doesn't get an opportunity to soak up the information. The other thing is that your brain learns visually much more quickly than it does by reading the written word. And so our ability to have conversations and see the visual chiclet for the particular document that we're talking about, or for someone to use a Giphy in this conversation, really enhances communication. It's not just for fun. It does bring some lightheartedness into the workplace, but it's actually a very effective communication tool. So the other thing to think about that's important to note is you're not supposed to read everything that gets posted in Teams. I hear this from a lot of users, like, how am I gonna keep up? There's just all this information, what have you. My answer to you is you're not supposed to try. What you're supposed to do is train your environment to mention you in particular when it is important that you see an item. All right? So @mention works just like it does on every other social collaboration tool, and it's a way to call attention to a particular piece of information. If I wanted to go here and say, hi there, have you seen this file? And I'm gonna @mention, there I am, okay? So I'm a user in this particular demo tenant. I just typed my name, it pops me up in the list, and now I will know that somebody is trying to get my particular attention. You could @mention individuals. I can also @mention the entire channel of people if it's something I want to make sure everybody who follows that channel can see. So @mentioning and following the channel are really the two fundamental ways that you control the information flow that's coming at you in Teams. And once that happens, I'm going to go ahead and post that. Once that happens, you can use your activity feed And this activity feed gives you the ability to filter information. I use this every single morning. The first thing I do in the morning, usually from my mobile device, is open Teams, go to my activity feed, and see where have people mentioned me overnight, right? So think of it like your own personal inbox in many respects, right? So that you can see, okay, what's the conversation doing? The other important thing to note is that back in that team area, I can hit this ellipses and I can follow this channel. That means that channel is really important to me. It's something I want to keep up on, and I want the activity there to show in my activity feed. So, and it will have a prioritized way of showing that because of the filters that are available. So I encourage you, if you've been in Teams for a little bit and you're starting to get information overload, make sure you ask people to @mention you, @mention a channel, and follow the channels that you pay attention to. The rest can flow through, and when you have time to look at it, you can. But this allows you to prioritize your experience in the product. So, of course, here I can have these conversations, but I can also go over and take a look at the files that are available to me. So this is a simplified view of SharePoint. Every team gets a SharePoint document library. It actually gets an entire SharePoint site because every team is an Office 365 group. So, one of the things that's been difficult in this transition is we had Yammer, we acquired that, we already had SharePoint, and then we acquired Yammer, and then we launched groups, and we said, hey, groups are the thing, everybody use groups. And we went, oh, just a moment, now we're gonna create Microsoft Teams, right? So from a system administration perspective, this can cause a lot of churn for your users, right? And so it is important to think about the messaging that you use now as you help people make this transition. Part of it should be reasonably easy because we are focusing our meeting and calling development inside of Teams. So that is one of the ways, even inside Microsoft, that we're moving people over to the new experience. Microsoft is doing its migration of all of its 200,000 users into Teams calling over the course of the next 6 months. We have large groups of 50,000, 60,000 people who are already using Teams as their primary client. They're no longer using Skype for Business to conduct meetings and calls. If you receive an outside meeting that uses Skype for Business, you can use the online client to join that. But all of the new meetings for these people are scheduled inside of Teams. So the ability to have this underlying SharePoint site available in Teams is important. Now, many organizations are using managed metadata, or they're using workflows. They're using more advanced features of SharePoint for this, for the work that they do. But a lot of people don't, right? If you talk to folks out there, a lot of people sometimes use SharePoint as a little bit of a dumping ground. They put their files up there and they never go back to them again, right? Or they just put the files up there because what's actually happening is they are still emailing around the spreadsheet. I've been in this business for 25 years and I can't seem to get you people to stop emailing the spreadsheet around. Stop it. I'm begging you, please stop emailing that document. In the era of cloud attachments, personal documents or documents that only you are working on in OneDrive for Business and team documents in SharePoint, it's simply not necessary. I can get to this document right here, and once I click on it, inside of Teams, I can actually take a look at it. Office 365 apps previews are available inside the product. I didn't have to hop out to a browser. I didn't have to open the desktop client. If I just want to see what this document is saying to me, then I can do that. I have a drop-down available here where I can edit it here in Teams, in the desktop client, or in the online version of the product. This is true for all Office products, right? So meaning PowerPoint, Word, Excel, Visio, etc. All right, so you can do that editing right here, but what's even greater is that I can start a conversation about this, okay? Thanks for these edits. It's looking great. Okay, so I just posted that to the conversation thread. I'm gonna go ahead and close this, and if I go back to the conversations in this channel, you will see that it's right here, okay, in the conversation thread. So it's an integrated experience. I like the comments inside of the Office applications, but sometimes those comments can get lost, and unless somebody knows how to turn on that comment window because it's about the document itself, you may not see what's going on. This is the core reason that my email is less. Because before, somebody would have emailed this document around, we would have been talking about it on email, somebody would have forked the conversation in email, they would have made changes in a local copy, and pretty soon my life becomes a nightmare because I do not know which version is the right version of the document. Right? Even though it's 2018, this is a fundamental issue in content management that we're all still dealing with. Right? So the idea of being able to have these files automatically integrated in with every channel, right? So there's a files area in every channel, and if I want to use more of the advanced capabilities, I can simply open this in SharePoint, and it will pop me out directly to the SharePoint site that's associated with this team. Now, we're going to be doing the SharePoint team and the Microsoft Teams team are extremely closely aligned. I talk to Jeremy Masner and Adam every week, and we are doing a tremendous amount of development to allow more of the SharePoint goodness to show up in Teams. So things like custom views of the document library with the metadata that you may associate to those documents showing up inside the product. Being able to do other things around workflow and what have you. So as we run up to Microsoft Ignite, which is in Orlando, it's our big customer conference at the end of September, you're going to see a lot more of these announcements coming out about the integration between Teams and SharePoint. I like to call it connective tissue, right? It's the connective tissue between the two products that we're actually building. Now, of course, I can also do things like see the PowerPoint presentation built in right here. But there's more than that. I want you to think about every project that you manage. Some of you may be using actual Microsoft project. Other people may be using something like Visual Studio or even a third-party application. For those of us who are professional PMs, like I consider myself a professional project manager, been doing it my entire career, sometimes I know that Microsoft project can be a bit daunting. Right? Not everybody, you can start it off really good, but then as the project continues, it doesn't continue to get updated. What people really need is a simple integrated way of tracking tasks and actions for a project, and that's why Planner is built into Teams. What you're looking at here is the integration of Planner into this particular channel. Right, this is my Teamwork Champions channel. This is an example of how I would run a champion program inside an organization. And what I've done is I have a backlog of to-do items, but I've also named these little buckets for the different types of content that I can create. And you can see in this one, I actually have a checklist of steps that have to happen so that I can deliver that particular one. If I want to add another view, the Power BI report, I can do that. Boom, I added a task very simply. I can go back to that task and I can do other things like talk about its status. I can give it a due date. So this is just the simple kinds of project management stuff that happens all the time. If I wanted to add an attachment to this particular one, I can put in a link or I can go directly to the SharePoint site that's built in here and I can find a document and attach it. So again, it's just simplified and easy for users to understand. If I add a comment, make sure to validate the data model. I think I didn't spell that right, but hey, there we go. I can do that, and then this information will be emailed out to the people who are assigned to this task, and I just assigned one of the team members to this. Now the thing about Planner is it's a core part of Office 365. So not only can you see it inside of Teams, you can also see it in the web view, and there's a mobile app for Planner as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click out of this now. So the idea that you can simply add more work streams, logistics, and start to add tasks there. This is how I run a lot of my project stand-ups now. So I do work in Visual Studio for the large-scale organization-wide task delivery because I'm working with large development teams. We work over there. I have Microsoft Project for other large-scale deliveries that I do with customers or with other divisions. But for my own particular work that I'm managing with my core tribe, my team, I'm using Planner now. And this view and having it built in right alongside the documents and everything else that I'm doing really helps me streamline and keep everything together. So when I'm having that meeting about the particular Champions program that's going to go on, and the change here that this is a meeting invite that's actually within the channel, I can share my screen, share my planner, and we're having that conversation right there, right before, during, and after. That's another key piece of why SharePoint and Teams are so important together, is that the idea is that your meeting experience is collaboration, right? So it's not something separate that's happening in some other, other application someplace. This meeting right here is what we call a channel meeting. It's available to everyone in the team. I also have the ability, of course, to come over here to meetings and see my Outlook calendar, and I can also go ahead and schedule another meeting with a particular individual. So this is what we call a private meeting, just like if you were doing it inside of your Outlook. And when I schedule this meeting with Adele, it's going to show up on her Outlook calendar. It shows up on my Outlook mobile. So it's integrated across everything. The difference, however, though, is once I do that, then I have a place where I can chat with her before the meeting. So you see here it says chat with participants. So if I start this up, I can start to have a conversation with Adele before the meeting about the meeting. And I don't know about you, but I used to get a lot of emails about that, right? I can ask Adele, what is your agenda for the upcoming review, right? I can ask her that, and she can answer me in the context. And I can also attach documents, right, from my own OneDrive if I wanted to do that. So say we're collaborating on a private document together. My own personal OneDrive is integrated here into Teams so that I can add a document to this. The other thing I love about this is that when I add a document here, what's going to happen is that Adele's automatically going to get rights to view and edit that document. I don't have to send a separate sharing email. I don't have to go back and answer her when she says, oh, I tried to open it, but I can't, right? Because what people do right now is they will do one sharing email and then they'll forward that email to other people. Except it doesn't work that way. If you share a document from SharePoint, the people you share it with have the rights. If you simply forward the email, it doesn't automatically add those rights to those people. Hence, you get the threads that are like, oh, you sent it, but I can't open it. All right? And so is this still happening to your users? Please tell me yes, yes or no. So the core issue there is to make sure that people are having a more streamlined experience and they don't have to think so much about the particular technology. They can just think about the work that they're trying to get done. Boom. I just shared that document with Adele. Adele now has the rights to that. We can collaborate on it here before we ever get to the meeting. So when we start to have this meeting, and we turn on our video and we're collaborating together, we're actually more effective the minute we walk into the meeting. So I spend, I don't know, 75% of my time probably, spend 25% of my time on an airplane, 75% of my time in meetings. And the transformation that has occurred by being able to collaborate like this more closely, I've really noticed a difference in being able to drive to outcome, have clear decisions, integrate conversations and action items into my meeting experience right from the application itself. Now, of course, Teams is a meeting and calling solution as well. If you have a calling plan with Microsoft, you can use it to make calls anywhere around the world. That represents the integration of Skype for Business and its capabilities into Teams. But you can also simply use it for voice over IP calling, where you don't actually have your own phone number. You're simply making a call over the internet as a client. So let's go back here too and talk about, I'm going to go back to the Teams. Now up here at the top, you'll notice that I have configured different tabs for this particular channel. Now the reason that these tabs are important, I'm going to go here, this is an integration of Stream. So having a channel that is a topic to work on is great. That's fantastic. You've got your file library there, everything is together, you can kick off flows, you can do all sorts of things from within there. But what really makes these channels more effective is when you start to customize the navigation along the top there with these tabs. The way to do that is to hit this plus sign, and this is going to get you into what we call the tab gallery. Okay. So you'll notice at the top you have all of the standard kind of Office 365 capabilities, as well as the Adobe PDF ability. And then this here is the website tab, which basically will let you pin any website from anywhere, as long as it starts with HTTPS, into your experience. So this is one of the ways that you can integrate existing SharePoint sites. So are some of you still running classic sites, I'm assuming? Yes, got some classic sites out there. You may have customized those sites. Just because you're moving into Teams doesn't mean you have to lose that. You can take that URL from that custom site, use your website tab, and plug it in here, and then have it be available inside of Teams. So as you're thinking about your collaboration experience, really think about SharePoint and Teams, not SharePoint or Teams. That's not the idea. We realize people have a tremendous investment in SharePoint already, right? So you don't have to kill that. We do talk about a lot of best practices though, because a lot of these SharePoint sites have become a dumping ground, and this is an opportunity for you to clean house a little bit if you want to. When we moved from SharePoint on-prem to the cloud, the petabytes of data that we moved, what we did was we said, hey, if this site hasn't been touched in 6 months, we're not going to move it. Right? We're going to send a note to the site owners. We're going to say, hey, if you want your data to be moved, then you have to opt in. If they didn't opt in or didn't answer that email, because, you know, we were Microsoft IT. People kind of don't read our emails. And so, you know, the point there was eventually somebody might say, yes, I do still need that information. But instead what we did was we moved the most recently accessed data to SharePoint Online. This really helped us clean up our environment. There are basically 3 categories of sites from our SharePoint Classic on-prem environment that we moved to the cloud. Those team sites that we could easily lift and shift, where documents had been accessed in the last 6 months. Then we had sites that had some visual customization that needed a little bit of additional testing. And so we took a look at those, made sure that they were migrated and that the experience turned out well, you know, when they did get shifted over. And the last were sites that had custom solutions that needed to be refactored as we went through the migration process. But any one of these sites, once they're in SharePoint Online, and even if they're still on-prem, can be displayed inside of Teams. So if you still have those classic sites available in your environment, as long as people are using them, that's fine. What you can also do at this time is you can turn those sites to be read-only. And what that will do is it will ask people to open up those documents and save it into the new online experience. So how you choose to do that migration or integration is up to you. It depends on the size of your organization. We have lots of best practices around that. I can answer questions about that, whatever you like. But I just encourage you to use this transformation as a way to streamline your environment and make it easier to manage. Because sometimes what's worse is having too much data rather than not having enough. So what you're looking at here is this integration of streams. So these are training videos that are integrated directly into the Teams experience in the stream service. Now I can also integrate a YouTube channel here if I wanted to. There's plenty of other stuff that I can do in that regard. And I want to show you here also our custom learning site. So custom learning is a free service that we created to help streamline access to all of our various training content. Now what you're seeing here is the integration of a SharePoint Modern Teams site into Microsoft Teams. So you can see it's got a beautiful display. It automatically takes care of getting rid of the Chrome. All of the Office 365 navigation in the left rail is gone. But it allows people to find this information directly inside of the Teams experience. Now, of course, I can hop out to the site itself, which I'm going to do right here. And so I'll give you the link to be able to sign up for this program, but the idea is that we're creating a free SharePoint Online template that you install in your own tenant. And it comes along with content and a custom web part that pulls from our training material. And it brings that training material into your environment, and you can turn on and off the workloads that you're using. Maybe you're not using OneDrive and you don't want to show that content to your users. You can change that. But let me flip over here to the training page itself. When I was a customer of Microsoft, one of the most difficult things I ever dealt with was trying to find all the information that Microsoft publishes. It's great information. It's just everywhere, right? I used to have this huge long set of bookmarks that I had inside of my browser to try and keep up with all the different stuff. This is extremely difficult for our users today. And it's even more true because we are changing these services very rapidly. We realize that. We're giving people new capabilities and they need training, but it's an expensive activity. And so what we wanted to do was at least make the experience of finding training content from Microsoft and eventually from our partners an easier process. So this is the Microsoft, the custom learning web part. And what you can do is you can take this web part alone if you only have a training, if you already have a training experience, and you can put this web part in your training site, or you can take the SharePoint Online site template if you don't have your own training portal yet. These are default playlists that are available. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Teams training playlist, and you can see here these are the training items that are available for Teams. Okay, and so this playlist model is really good for users. People understand it. Most folks know what a playlist is. These are curated via the research that we do in our Max team. And this whole experience is a partnership between SharePoint, myself and Microsoft Teams, and the folks who run training and documentation for Microsoft as a whole. I also have the ability here from this menu to hide and show technology. So again, like I said, maybe I don't want to include Outlook here for some reason, or I don't want to include Word. I can apply that change, and then those workloads, those training assets will turn off. Right? So it's completely customizable in your own experience, either the web part and the site itself. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this here. Okay. And you can embed this web part on any particular page that you may want. So for instance, I have a page, I'm going to go ahead and leave this. I have a page that's about getting started with Microsoft Teams. And so now my playlist is going to show just the Teams training information within the context of this particular page. Okay? So we really think that this capability of being able to bring this training stuff together in something that you can customize for your own environment is really valuable. So this is in beta right now. What I'm showing is the most recent beta version. We'll be releasing yet another public preview at the end of September at Ignite. You can sign up for it through our Champions program in the Microsoft technical community, and you can be able to download this package and play with it yourselves. Our general availability for it will happen before the end of the calendar year, and we're really excited about this because this is actually, just like Microsoft Teams, a representation of the changing culture at Microsoft. You have two engineering groups and one of our major support divisions working together to build a solution to bring to you. Now, I don't know about you, but in the past, that would not have been an easy thing to pull off at Microsoft. And now we're really, really encouraged to make that shift, to work together differently, to deliver better experiences. I also like the fact that I am able to create custom playlists. So down here, I'm going to go into this for a moment. Okay, this is a custom playlist that I created for Microsoft Teams. So think about in your own organization, maybe you have employee onboarding that is a special process, how people request time off. Any of the processes that you have in your organization, you simply make SharePoint pages for the assets and information and add a particular an asset to a custom playlist. So you can customize this to your heart's content. It doesn't have to be about Microsoft information. The training web part will support any scenario that you might want to drive training on. And then you can pin that particular playlist directly inside the team where that training makes sense. All right? So it's about helping people get the information they need at the time they need it with as few clicks as possible. Right? Obviously in this demonstration I'm clicking around so I can show you the different components of it, but you wouldn't want your users to have to do that because that's what happens right now. People get lost in the training material, right? Or they don't really have the time to come to a long class. Part of our strategy here is that the reference items are very short and easy to understand. The various and sundry videos are what we call, tasty videos. They're usually less than 2 minutes. And that just enables people to learn a particular task that they want to learn right then and help them understand what's going on. If somebody wants to attend one of our online trainings, for Microsoft Teams. We have an hour-long onboarding on our show, Coffee in the Cloud, on YouTube. They can do that, but that's a very small percentage of users who will make that time to sit through an online training or come to an instructor-led class. So in the middle, we want to make sure people are learning how to use cloud technologies so they become more digitally literate, right? That digital literacy is what's going to keep them from emailing around that spreadsheet for another decade, right? We don't want them to do that. We want them to take advantage of cloud attachments and make sure that they have that available. The other piece that we've done here is we've included content that are best practices. We have administrative content. You can turn that on and off. Your end users won't see that. And you can build in your own user community and support links. Like say, for instance, you're using Yammer as your support community. You can add a link to that right here, all right? And then, of course, this is all of our best practices around creating your own champion program. How many of you run a user group or champions program inside your company? All right, a few of you? Okay. If you're not doing that, you are missing some of the best knowledge you will ever get about how people are using Office 365 and the custom solutions that you're building inside your company. Right? There are definitely users in every company who are more interested in technology than others. These are the people that you want to cultivate to help build that community. They are a fantastic form of feedback. Right? It's about whether or not you may think something's working, right? You think you built this awesome solution and it's fantastic, but there's something that you missed. Every time I watch a focus group in Microsoft Teams or in SharePoint, I learn something new that I take for granted is easy to figure out, but actually isn't for our users. So it's really important that you create a forum for those people, either online, in Teams, or in Yammer, but preferably like something like a lunch and learn, right? A monthly meeting, bring food. Food is a very important component of building community, right? Bring some food to them and really start to build your relationship with them, right? Because they will help you in this transition. We have a very robust Teamwork Champion program inside of Microsoft. We have monthly meetings there. I'm their Teams advisor. And these are the people who are actually in the different divisions, helping people understand how to use the new technology. People learn better from their peers. Right? People get nervous. If I show up to teach a class, they may enjoy it, but they're going to learn more from Sally down the hall, who they know she knows how to do this stuff. They're going to go ask her that question first. So they are a way for you to scale. Because when I worked at Skechers for a long time, it was just me. There was no collaboration team. There was Karuana, right? Morning, noon, and night. I built the stuff, I managed this stuff, and I trained people on this stuff. And so if any of you are in that situation, champions and having an internal user group are even more important for you because you can't be everywhere at once. It's just not possible. We all need to sleep sometimes, no matter how much we love SharePoint. So it's really important that you build that community, and there's lots of instructions here about how to do that, and that's a part of what this site is about. The other piece that I wanted to show here is this idea of your digital day. So once you become a subject matter pseudo-expert in something like SharePoint or Teams, you tend to think of everything in that lens. But that's not how people actually work. People have a day. They use multiple products in that day. And I really wanted to pull together content that helped people understand how to leverage all of the pieces of Office 365 differently, especially with the advent of Teams and bringing them all together. And so we felt like there were some key elements here that made a lot of sense in terms of how people actually use the technology. Let me blow that up a little bit. So I don't know about you, but my day starts when my alarm goes off. It's the alarm on my phone. The first thing I do is I pick up my phone, turn off my alarm usually, snooze it a couple of times. And then once I finally get up, I look at my calendar. Right? I want to see, what does my day entail? It tells me what I have to prepare for, what I have to wear, and where I'm going. So I look at my calendar first. Then now I hop over and I look at Teams and I see what happened in the overnights, right? I looked at that activity feed. I may pull up an Office document or go view a SharePoint site or Power BI dashboard. But all of that happens while I'm having my morning coffee. Right? And you can see the rest of these scenarios during your commute, when you're meeting at the office, when you're collaborating with your team, and when you're communicating across the company. These are some of the basic scenarios that every employee has to manage and deal with. right? The question is how. And can we as technology professionals really transform their experience, right? So that they are less stressed out. If you look at a lot of modern workers today, there's not really that much work-life balance. We talk about it, but it doesn't always happen. There's an always-on state that has become a default in this business, and it's not really that good for all of us. So if we can help them collaborate more effectively, have more effective meetings, track tasks more easily, we can actually get people home to their families sooner, which for me I think is really important, right? It's where this work becomes meaningful, when I can actually affect someone's life in that way. So we wanted to deliver this digital day information and allow you to customize it again for the tools that you use in your environment. Obviously, we've got some basic ones there and some different guidance, but you can edit this content because this site's in your tenancy. Right? So maybe you have different tools that you use for video meetings in your firm or what have you, right? You can include that information in here, and every time the site gets updated, it will respect any customizations you make to these pages. So our update package will come along, and if we see that you've edited a page, we'll simply put our new page alongside it, and then that way we don't overwrite the changes that you've made. The website, it's the web part itself that I was showing earlier, that automatically streams new content so that all of these video assets and what have you are automatically up to date. And that is a good thing because, again, as I mentioned, we are changing the services quite a lot. Microsoft Teams has an extremely aggressive delivery schedule of new features. And, you know, one of my GMs, she has this fantastic slide, and it shows all of the different features that we've launched over time. And I saw it, you know, and of course everybody's really proud of everything that we've delivered, and we've delivered it so quickly. And I said, I have to tell you that the IT pro in me sees that slide and starts to get a little nauseous because it's so much work to keep up. And that's just one service, right? If you're not checking out the Message Center and staying up to date with our major announcements in that way, I highly encourage you to do it. If you're not an Office 365 admin in your particular tenancy, then have your admin put you on a mailing list so that you get those updates, right? Because that's the only way to really keep up. So the important thing about this training content is you don't have to update it yourself. You know, the training content, for instance, about Excel, as new capabilities come along for formatting information, why this video itself, because it's being streamed directly from us, will automatically be updated. Now in the future, we're also going to allow some of our core content partners to add their own content here. So there's lots of fantastic training partners that have made training content and they have engagements with all of you as customers. We want to make sure that their content can be seen here as well. So we'll announce some of those partnerships as we move forward to Ignite and help people to understand what's there. So what I want to do here is I'm going to hop back. And the last thing to remember about Teams in general is that it is not just about Microsoft technology. When you go here and take a look at the store, you will see that you have access to many other applications that are published by third-party providers. Now, as an IT person, you can turn on or off these applications. You don't have to let everybody have access to everything. We're delivering app-based policies so that you can select only a certain group of people to have access to some of these third-party apps. But you can also publish your own third-party apps to this app store and have an enterprise app catalog that modernizes some of those app experiences. We just finished what we call a Dev Kitchen event up in Seattle, helping industry folks understand some of these new development models, and it's just cool stuff. So the ability to develop solutions inside and publish them to an app catalog within this experience exists. It can be managed like you would expect to manage an enterprise product, and it's just an important thing to note that these things are available. We know at Microsoft that it's not always a Microsoft-only world. People use other products. We want to make sure that you can integrate them here into the experience. So I want to go back now here to the end here, and I just want to show you a couple things. As you think about the work that you're doing in Microsoft Teams, make sure that you're modernizing these core scenarios. project management, personal productivity, and calling in meetings. There's lots of low-hanging fruit out there to make people's collaboration experience better. This slide I created from all of the feedback I've gotten from customers literally all around the world of the difficulties that they still have in these basic scenarios. So Teams is definitely for that, and especially the integration of SharePoint and Teams together. These challenges and simplifications can be handled in a super effective way. As I said, as we move forward into Ignite and the rest of this calendar year, we're going to continue to build in more connective tissue between SharePoint and Teams. These are some of the examples of the list experience. You can pin a list inside of Teams right now, but it's not the most beautiful experience ever. So we are improving the list integration views inside of Teams, as well as document sharing options, document management options, and all of the goodness that is SharePoint. There's a lot of core scenarios that you can use to make sure that you are thinking about this broadly, but between those basic scenarios, you can make your journey to Teams an item that will really help your users. At the end of the day, it's not about the individual workloads in Microsoft 365 or Office 365. It's really about how people are using it. That's why the custom learning solutions are so important, because if people aren't understanding how to attach that cloud attachment, then they're missing out on most of the goodness that Office 365 delivers. If they're not using forms to gather feedback or Planner to track tasks, and instead they're doing it someplace in Notepad, right, you are missing out as an organization on that ability to gather that information together. We have a lot of resources that are available to you, especially, let me just show you this quickly here. This is what we call successwithteams.com. This is all of our planning, adoption, management, documentation experience. There's a link to our developer documentation here. And so successwithteams.com is available for all of you. And I encourage you to join our O365 Champions program. The link is in my deck. This is a monthly meeting with folks like myself inside Microsoft. It's free, and you get early access to all of our adoption tools across Office 365. So folks from SharePoint and Yammer and Forms and Flow and Business Apps come to this meeting and talk about new capabilities. I'm the manager of this, and it's for IT pros and business users and developers. We have rotating content for all of the various audiences. We really want you to engage with us and make sure that you're out here in the Microsoft technical community, because our blog out there for Teams is where we talk about Teams and SharePoint and all of the new things that are coming. So it's a lot of content. These slides are going to be available to all of you after this session, and I will be there in the back answering more questions. But the most important thing to remember is this is really about all of you. You know, I'm forever grateful to the SharePoint community for welcoming me and giving me a place for my unique talents, giving me a home and a place where I could develop my career. SharePoint did that. Microsoft Teams will continue that legacy. And all of you are super important to making sure that we have great user experiences and solutions in the cloud from now into the future. So I really want to thank you for listening to me today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.